Welcome back. So, President Karzai's popularity is on the decline on home ground. But is the case any different internationally, especially in the United States of America? Well, the US is heavily involved in reconstructing and restoring stability in Afghanistan. Washington has not hinted who they will support in the upcoming elections. Karzai was a George Bush favorite, but that era ended with the new president, Barack Obama. His administration has questioned the effectiveness and honesty of Karzai's government. In a recent interview with Al Jazeera, Karzai spoke about the changing dynamics in the relationship with the US.
There is tension between us and the United States government on issues of civilian casualties, arrests of Afghans, nightly raids on homes and casualties that they cause.
Well, we're still joined by our guests in Kabul, Mirwais Yassini, in Washington, D.C., Hamid Karzai, and also in D.C., Hilary Mann-Leverett. Mr. Yassini, hasn't Karzai been good as a representative of that collective Afghan anger in complaining to the U.S. and to the world about the killing of civilians by NATO and U.S. troops? Hasn't he done a good thing by that complaint?
Well, we have to admit that the civilian casualties is very bothering, it is bother all Afghans as well all human beings. Well, we are also fed up with Al-Qaeda that they are doing the operation and killing the civilians. But one question is that why we are not mentioning Al-Qaeda's remoted civilian casualties that we are mentioning about the coalition. Well, I'm not saying that there's any permission to the coalition that they should carry on with those collateral damages or collateral casualties. But this was happening since 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. And it increased, but in time, when President Bush was in power, in Kabul had a very good relation with the White House. That issue would have, if it would have been addressed at that time, that would have been much better, and we would have sought a lot of solution for that. But unfortunately, that's all those media clashes between Washington and Kabul, that is unnecessarily, and that does demoralize the relation, and it does give moral to the enemy. And we have to think that we have a common ground, and we have a common platform, that we do have to fight terrorism, and we get to get rid of our enemy. So the Afghan nation is sharing those views with the president, but that is not very timely.
Mr. Karzai, Hamid Karzai, the NATO Secretary General said there was a lack of leadership in the country. Hillary Clinton told U.S. Congress that Afghanistan was a, quote, narco state and that it was plagued by limited capacity and widespread corruption. When you hear comments like that, surely, you know, it must be easy to understand that this current Afghan government has lost all support of the international community and, in particular, the United States.
Look, it's quite clear that I think after 7 years, a government is bound to lose support. The government is bound to at least lose some goodwill from the population. It's very clear to us. But what is important for us to realize that when the coalition forces, the international community came to Afghanistan, there was going to be a partnership. And in many ways, that partnership still exists, but there's lack of communication between the partners. Afghans for the last 3-4 years have been communicating, saying there are certain policies, certain actions, certain behaviors that are undertaken by the coalition forces are just wrong. You have to understand the Afghan society. You have to understand that we are a collective, but at the same time a religious society, where you cannot send dogs to someone's houses and have the dog bitten, be children or females for that regard. So those kind of things Afghans have been saying with bilateral relations with their counterparts, but at the same time now those relationships has actually been to a certain extent paralyzed. So Afghans have no other options but to say this is the things that we are frustrated with. And briefly, if I could just go back to that survey issue was done by Western institution. It was not that it was done by Afghans, so you could see bias in it. But at the same time, these are the same Western associations that would sometimes criticize President Karzai and his government. But it's the same Western institutions that are saying that he still maintains over 50% of the support within the population.
Ms. Leverett, we were talking about the US looking at possible alternatives for Hamid Karzai. What about his alternatives in terms of alliances? Because there's been some news coming out about a letter of understanding between Hamid Karzai and Russia. Some say it was deliberately leaked to the press. Is there fear in the US that he's courting Afghanistan's old enemy, Russia, given that he's not receiving as much love from the West?
Well, I think there's a tremendous capacity here in Washington to underestimate key players in some difficult areas around the world, and that is particularly true for Afghanistan. I think we are underestimating Karzai's abilities as a politician. We underestimate his abilities, I think, to our own detriment, but he has an interesting card to play. I think his ability now to say, look, I gave the United States a chance. I gave the international community a chance. I worked with them. I tried to bring policies into line, but the United States continues its aerial bombardments, continues the civilian casualties inside Afghanistan in a way that's unacceptable. And even though President Obama has said that he's going to close the prison in Guantanamo Bay, he has actually come out to say legally that he supports President Bush's decision to keep a prison at the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, where Afghans are taken into detention inside Afghanistan without any due process. So I think what Karzai is going to do is to continue to pull from this anti-American, growing anti-American sentiment inside Afghanistan, and then he's going to play international players that have their own concerns vis-a-vis the United States. That includes Russia, that may include Iran, and others. I think he is a politician who we underestimate to our detriment, and I'm afraid we may be doing just that in the hopes that we could somehow find some other quote-unquote strong man that we could support and then back up with at least 17,000 troops.
Mirwais Yassini, his term is due to end in May. If he doesn't get his way and get those early elections, who's going to run the country in that process of his term ending and the elections taking place in August or September?
Well, this is a self-made situation, so we don't have a proper treatment for that, I mean, to be really honest. But the best way, according to the Section 4 of the Constitution, the parliament is the sole representation of the Afghan nation, and you're reflecting the views of the Afghan nation. So in my view, that would be better to go to that representation of the people, to the representative of the people, and they have to decide that what emergency solution they can propose. And along with the judiciary plus the legislation has to come up with a very best solution, which is according to the equity in conscience and to be accorded with the national interest of Afghanistan.
Mirwais Yassini, Hamid Karzai and Hilary Mann Leverett, thank you very much, all of you, for sharing your thoughts with us here on Inside Story. Well, that is it for this edition of Inside Story. You're always welcome to email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. We'll leave you with some of the thoughts of Kabul residents about their president's decision. See you soon.
If the elections are postponed, this will be a violation of the Constitution. We hope the President respects the Constitution and holds the elections on time.
When the President announces he brings forward the election, the Parliament refuses and vice versa. We ask all of them to just care about how we feel.
This decision will only confuse the opposition's electoral campaign.
We are concerned that elections under his tenure may not be transparent. Not only that it may not be transparent, now we have the problem of not having enough time really to prepare for this.